Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Stadium Showdown, your in-depth look at the future home of the Cleveland Browns. I'm Jeff Slauson. Well, it happened. A major reversal of opinion. ODOT allowing the Browns Stadium to be built within the airspace of Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. This was a massive, massive story. Just weeks after ODOT initially said that, after they went to the city of Cleveland to seek approval, the building of the stadium at its current height, which would have been about 50 feet above federal limitations, would have been dangerous to airport operations. Well, then we looked into some of the numbers and we determined that over the last year, only 0.12% of all flights landed at the runway that was potentially an issue. Here's the thing. After there was a back and forth between the city of Cleveland, ODOT, and of course, Haslam Sports Group, it was determined that there would not be a massive issue with this. In fact, rarely would you see an airplane close to where that site actually is. 19's Dan DeRose breaks this down on what has been truly an insane reversal of opinion.
It was Thursday that ODOT announced late in the day that they are going to go ahead and they have issued a permit to be able to build the Browns' proposed stadium next to the airport. But what went into that decision? They have released the report. Now, what ODOT did, and I think this was fairly smart, because you had the city and the county saying it's too dangerous, it's going to impact the airport and the flights that are coming in and out of there. ODOT went and hired a third-party company, somebody that's outside of this argument, even though the FAA had already ruled that there would be no impact. ODOT went out and they hired a company called Capital Airspace. And here's what they did. First of all, let's look at the site overview. Here is the stadium, the proposed stadium, the exact location. So really the only runway that comes into play here is this east-west runway. If you're coming this way, which is where the concern is, it's runway 28. So they did an extensive look at what are called the visual flight references and what pilots see when they come in and out of those runways. Again, here is runway 28 and here is the proposed stadium. And as you see, these visual flight references do not impact the stadium in any way, shape, or form according to this third party. And they looked at it over and over and over. The only time it might apply is what's called the secondary areas. The primary areas are in red. The secondary areas for what they call runway 24 instrument approach procedures are right here. And what they note in their report is that it's only going to impact less than a flight a day and not put them at any risk, but where that visual, that secondary visual would come into play only happens less than one flight a day. And according to the FAA, that does not meet their definition of a significant impact. So here are the determinations. Here is the final assessment that went ahead and they confirm what the FAA had already determined. Capital Airspace initial assessment. At the proposed height, the stadium will not degrade or diminish aviation safety, will not limit visual flight reference operations in any way, will not limit instrument flight references operations in any way. The airport will continue to operate exactly as it currently operates after the stadium is constructed. Once ODOT saw this, a third party that came in and looked at it, they went ahead and approved the permit. We're going to welcome in now a business law professor from Case Western Reserve University. Eric Chafee has been following this saga. How does this come off from the city's perspective? They thought this was their golden arrow, that this was finally something that they had found to shut this whole project down and potentially keep the Browns downtown. This can't look good from the city's perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's one of those things where often to achieve your goals politically, there can be multiple different paths. I think the city really very much did think that this was going to be what kept the Browns downtown, or at least gave them some more leverage in this process. I'm sure they're disappointed by this, but the abundance of caution really was not surprising. And then, in addition to that, the fact that after further review, especially with the FAA approval, that this ended up being called back, isn't that surprising as well?
Dan DeRose, 19 News.
That is exactly what the Browns have wanted to hear. So what's been the reaction to it? Let's start with Haslam Sports Group. This is a statement from Dave Jenkins, a man that you have heard from quite a bit, Haslam Sports Group president. He says, and I quote, "We respect both the comprehensive work that the FAA did to determine that our stadium project poses no hazard to the surrounding area and ODOT's diligent process to confirm these findings. Safety is of paramount importance to all of us and was at the forefront of our detailed and deliberate process with our FAA consultants, whom we engaged with well before our architects began designing the stadium. We value our collaborative work with the FAA and ODOT and also understand the importance of similar collaboration with Cleveland Hopkins International Airport leadership to ensure efficiency and success of both the airport's modernization efforts and our project in Brook Park. We welcome and hope for productive dialogue and working sessions with airport leadership and other relevant stakeholders as we move forward with these transformative economic development initiatives for all of Northeast Ohio." The statement from the county says, and I quote, "Cuyahoga County is disappointed by ODOT's decision to approve a construction permit for a stadium next to Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, despite safety concerns outlined by the airport director, and in contradiction with standard practice to defer to local authorities regarding safety concerns. We remain deeply concerned about the stadium project's impact on airport safety and risk to the traveling public, and we'll be following up with ODOT leadership directly." And the last statement I want to read to you is the statement from Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. They say, and I quote, "Ensuring safe and reliable operations has always been our highest priority. As we've emphasized previously, any project with the potential to affect the airport's operation is a major concern. While we respect ODOT's decision, its reversal does not change our position. Development matters, but not if it comes at the expense of the airport's safety, efficient, and reliable operations. We remain open to collaboration and dialogue with our partners to ensure growth benefits the region while always prioritizing safety." So, predictably, the airport disagrees. The county disagrees. The Haslams are obviously incredibly excited about this because, yeah, this really opens the pathway for the stadium to really start to kick into high gear. There are still lawsuits that need to be handled, but at least as far as that portion of it, this is a massive, massive development that is going to have enormous repercussions for how that stadium is going to progress. All right, and coming up after a short break, we take you down to Brook Park, where they had a lot to say this week. Not about the airport. Seems like potentially they knew this announcement was coming, but how they're going to get this stadium built and the amount of money they're willing to put forward. That after a short break. Welcome back. The announcement from ODOT, obviously exactly what Brook Park wants to hear. But earlier in the week, during their scheduled council meeting, they did not reference it once. Seems potentially they knew this was coming. But also for them, it's really about looking ahead. How's the funding going to go down? How are you going to be able to figure out where exactly you can put some of these lots? And also, when can we start to see some progress? The mayor addressing quite a few of those concerns during the meeting.
The Browns, I would advise council to say that the administration is working on a development agreement. At this time, we have started that. There's been a lot of things that we've had to work on with our track funding application, with our feasibility study. There's been so much work put in that and emphasis on that, that now we are now overlapping and getting into the development agreement. Bottom line is this: we can only afford a certain amount of threshold. We've got to make cash from this. There's got to be guarantees there. Obviously, and I don't know if it's being articulated the right way from the county. Maybe it could be done a little bit differently. It may not be set up the way from the original way that would really benefit the county. I would still say publicly here that I would like to see county involvement at some point, some way, whether not just through security and providing the sheriff's department as applicable and needed during major events. But if there isn't as much revenue coming in from them, if there is some type of participation that would still be positive cash flow for the county, I'd still like to continue with that. But for our residents right now, we're working on a development agreement, and that's going to come down to, you know, how much everybody's in. Obviously, right now, the original numbers are probably nowhere where we're going to be, but we do know that we do have a private investment of over $2 billion, and that the state is committed to $600 million with guarantees in there, and that'll follow inflation as well too. So some of the promises there are that that the money's coming in and the stadium's there. Now we're really working to make sure that the highway upgrades, which is so important being next to the airport, is a priority.
So it doesn't seem like they are really sure about some of the funding points, but it feels like they're going to absolutely get there because this project is so massive. Now, that development agreement, I'm going to guess that's something that needs to be done fairly quickly, but we wait to hear more about that, in addition to the fact that we're trying to see when that dirt is going to start to get moved. Again, the timeline was Q3/Q4 of 2025 is when we would start to see dirt moving at the site, and then the beginning of 2026 is when construction would officially begin. So we're going to want to see when that dirt starts moving, because that means things are really starting to pick up, again, with the hope that the 2029 season could see the first Browns game in Brook Park. And coming up after the break, the Browns, they have their own podcast. They explain some of the parts of the development, why it's going where it's going, and what they see as far as the future development in that spot. We will have much more on that coming up after a short break. Welcome back. The Browns have their Building Brownstown podcast, where they're able to get access to quite a few developers that we are not able to speak to here at 19 News. So this week, talking to one of the developers about the actual project itself, what it's supposed to do, what it means for the area, and how they kind of settled on all of this. I think a lot of the answers here are pretty telling. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit more buttoned up than a traditional interview, but still, it's important to get this perspective on it, because now that the airport's figured out, we got a couple of lawsuits, and then this thing's going to be full steam ahead. So what could we see from it? How long could this take? Let's listen.
You know, it's interesting when you step back and you look at these type of developments. It ultimately is about bringing people together, whether it's for a game, whether it's for, you know, the experiential retail that we're bringing, whether it's hotels, whether it's office, whether it's you know, the true work, live, play environment. And you know, ultimately, you know, it brings people together, and it's connective tissue, just like the Browns organization.
One of the things that you like about being maybe not the first one that's been done, as I mentioned, you guys have done the Star. What have you learned kind of about these entertainment districts that you're going to be able to apply here in the Brook Park development?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's a connective tissue with the stadium and with the organization like the Browns. You know, when you step back, and certainly we are huge Browns fans, but if you look at the at the fan base that the Browns have in Northeast Ohio, just having in an environment today where it's so digitally, I mean, we're talking over video right now, but it's so digitally mastered, you know, throughout our lives. To have that analog experience is what people are driving for with their families, their friends, and you know, the people of the community.
And if you want to watch any of our previous coverage, go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. That is where you can find every single episode, every single article, every single video over on cleveland19.com, and of course at the QR code on your screen right now. Before we end the show, I want to get to a quick viewer question that we had. I'll pull it up for you right now. This is from King Covert. He asks, how much will the local economy benefit from the construction of the new stadium? Is there an agreed amount of local jobs that are guaranteed? It's a great question, and it's a question that we actually do have an answer for. Let me show you the numbers that are courtesy of the Cleveland Browns. According to them, they say that the annual direct economic output of the project is $1.2 billion across Cuyahoga County, as well as 5,400 permanent jobs. Of the $1.2 billion in annual economic output, $550 million is projected to come from the surrounding mixed-use development. So that is the hotels, the businesses, things like that. So that's not going to be all right away. They go on to say that another $217 million is projected to occur at the stadium from major events and other non-NFL activities, showing significant economic impact to the region. So to recap, the Browns are claiming more than 5,000 jobs and more than $1.2 billion in economic impact. Whether that is officially the case, obviously, is yet to be determined, but that's what their study says, and that's what they believe will be the case. And of course, if you have any questions, go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. Love to hear from everybody at home. Really, really want to be able to answer any question you have, so go ahead, scan that QR code. And that is it for the latest in the Stadium Showdown. Thank you so much for watching. We will have many more episodes to come. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. Again, thank you for watching. We'll see you coming up next week.